Hi there. Looks like we've got a good amount of numbers now, so I think I'll crack on. We can see the lights on for the first time in here because it looks like summer has definitely disappeared as I'm looking out my window and it's pouring down with rain. So that means we can all stay inside and learn about Futrli. Isn't that fun? Obviously, we didn't have one of these last week. So for those, I can see some familiar faces on there. So I can see Helen and Martin and others as well. I know you've been coming to them regularly, so I apologise I didn't have one last week. I was off on annual leave, so it's good to get back into the swing of it this week. And for those that don't know me, I'm Sam. I head up the account management team here at Futrli. I've been here for 2 years now. I think my 2-year anniversary actually was yesterday, for those who got me on LinkedIn. But today we're going to be looking at kind of how to build out your first forecast and report. So we'll take it right back to kind of basics and work it through there. You'll see, obviously, like I mentioned, I'm working from home. My wife is actually in the office today, so I'm home alone with the dog. So if the dog does go crazy, I don't really have anyone to control it. So hopefully he behave himself. If you've got any questions though through the session, obviously just use the Q&A function, and I'll probably come to them at the end of the session, which you probably won't need the full hour, but we might need like 45 minutes or so, but certainly, yeah, put your questions in there and we'll come to that at the second part. I will share the recording as well following today's session, as well as any material I think it might be relevant. So you will have everything at your fingertips. I'll probably send it out later today or tomorrow morning. Cool. So I'll log in and share my screen. Cool. So you should be able to see this now. This is just my kind of Futrli dashboard that I was last on. So when you log in, it will first go to a board that you were last on. But because we're going to be building out our first report and forecast here, we're going to jump to the organizations tab here. This is where we can then connect up one of your clients. So we can come in here and we click add organization. So here we can then select the accounting source for us to connect. So if we're working with a cloud-based client, we can connect to Xero or QuickBooks. That'll then just sync automatically every day without you having to do anything. You can also upload a manual organization. So if you've got a client on Sage, you might see that Sage here is coming soon, but that's going to be removed soon. So it's not there. You need to use the create manual organization option. You can also consolidate as well. So if you're working with a group, so maybe a group of pubs, you can consolidate that there. And if you've got, if any of our Australian friends are online, MYOB is there as well. But I think our Australian friends are probably in bed, I think. But cool, we'll cancel that. When you then connected up the client for the first time, it's best to do a bit of admin. This is just so we can then kind of address the chart of accounts, get it structured how we want, and it just allows for a better presentation of data, really. So if you jump into the settings of that company that's now synced, we can then now see the chart of accounts. So here we've got the kind of main categories of the profit and loss and also on the balance sheet. If you open up any of the categories, you'll then see the accounts within it. So what we can do now is do some grouping. So this grouping is more relevant probably on the P&L because you're probably going to have more accounts. And so if we go down to our expenses, for example, we'll see we've got a load of accounts here. And we'll see that we've got like a subheading. This is a group that I've already created for some of my expenses. Because that then means if we put them into a group, we'll be able to, rather than just select like the 30 or so different expense codes, which can look a bit busy on a chart, we can just simply look at the group level. So you then might only have 5 lines on your line graph, for example. So if we just select the ones that we want to put into a group, click Move/Group. We'll give it a name. So this is going to be Utilities. Select our parent, which is Expenses, and then click Create. Cool. If we then scroll down, we'll see that Utilities has been created there. We can also, in this area, do some reordering as well. So if you click Reorder, you can then drag these around to put in a different area of your chart of accounts. So you can then change the order that they appear. You can also do the moving of accounts into groups in this way, but it's probably better to do it the previous way. And within here as well, on the Move/Group option, if, for example, you missed one that should have been in the group, you can just tick it, click Move/Group, and instead of using the Create a New Group option, we can use the Bulk Move Accounts. This is where you can then just move it wherever you want in the P&L. So you might also find, let's say an expense comes through, but you think it should be an other expense. You can just move it to other expenses. We could do the same grouping and moving of accounts on the balance sheet side as well. So you might have a common one might be items that come through as a bank account, but instead it's an asset. You can move things around, do the same grouping as well. And it's important when you first connect with your client to do that kind of couple minutes or so of basic admin, because it will then kind of save it. You won't have to do it again. And it will just allow, like I said, for better presentation of information, just be cleaner and simpler, and also allows you to then build out a different level of report, because rather than analysing all accounts, you might see different trends in areas of the business if you've grouped it, such as like bar or restaurant and so forth, if it's a hotel, for example. In this area as well, it's also worthy to note that you can upload non-financial data. So we're not going to do any of this right now, but it's just a good way if you are setting up the client and you want to upload non-financial data, you can do that here. So it might be really good if you're working with any, I mean, I'm sticking with hospitality as my examples, but obviously pubs and restaurants are having to shut by 10 o'clock now. So if you do have any in there, customer headcount might be a good one, like a pre and a post 10 p.m. Ruling. You could see what the impact might be from forecasted drop in headcount if you've got a pub that's open later than 10, for example. So it could be a good way of using non-financial data. And so when you set up the client, upload it, and you can then start to report and forecast with it as well. Cool. So we're going to now say that client is fully set up. We can now start to build a report for it. I'm going to first build out a couple forecasts. I'm then going to build out a report from scratch, I think, just so you can see how we do that for the first time. So we're going to jump into the forecasting tab here. Here we can see a list of all our clients set up. And when we then build a forecast out for one of these clients for the first time, these settings appear. So these settings then enable us to put in the correct VAT details. So when you first come to it, I believe it'll be on do not pay tax. So you need to switch it, if they do pay VAT, to quarterly, if that's the right setup. You then put in the last day of the VAT return, days after the period ends, so 37 days you have to put in there, so a month and 7 days, and then 20% tax of the default rate for all the items. If there's a different VATable rate within your forecast, you can just change it individually, which we'll have a look at in a sec. But this is the default rate. But the same applied with the things on the right-hand side. These are the accounts to put in for the default accounts. So the accounts receivable, what is the one that's most commonly used for the accounts receivable? That would be our accounts receivable. So you might have a trade debtors account or debtors control account. And then with the default bank account, there's going to be multiple bank accounts probably. We just need to select the correct one that is most commonly used. We can all change all of these within the forecast, just setting up the default settings, and then click Save. Kind of like with the grouping, once you've done the settings, you don't have to do that again when you build out another forecast, just kind of once and done, but you can amend them if you want to. So then I'm going to click New, and then load up this forecast options. So we've got a variety of ways that we can build out. You can build from scratch, so it's a kind of a blank one. You can upload a CSV if you've got one in Excel. You can build one from last year's figures, and you can copy one. So we're going to use, like I mentioned, two forecasts in this way, because we're going to build like a base forecast, which is going to be our budget, and then going to build a forecast off the back of that budget. So we're going to use both the quick create and we're going to use the what if functions. So we're going to use the quick create firstly. I'm going to call this budget. You can do a forecast anywhere up to 10 years. If you want to be really ambitious, most people certainly stick to 1 to 3. It might take a bit of time to do a 10-year forecast. But I'll leave it as 1, because that's a little bit more sensible in current times. You can change the date. If the books are up to date, maybe out of date, for example, you could put it back to July if they're only reconciled to them. But we'll leave it at September because we're going to assume that this client's got everything in order. And then click Build. Cool. Let's put our forecast in a matter of seconds. It's pretty cool. It is a three-way forecast. Certainly everything at Futrli kind of centers around that. We always like to ensure that we're looking at everything, not just cash. We're looking at the full business overview. So we've got our profit and loss, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. And just to explain where these numbers have come from, the profit and loss is exactly the same as last year. So it's last year's P&L applied to today's balance sheet. So this 173,000, that's September 19th figure. Same with October 20, 296,000, that's October 19th figure. So that P&L is exactly the same, and we just applied it to today's balance sheet. So it's a great benchmark to use to kind of say, this is your year. If you had no changes, this is what it would look like. So as I've kind of called it there, we're going to use it as a budget. We're just going to be, our budget is going to be exactly the same. Continue as you are. This is what the kind of baseline budget will be. Obviously, you can go and amend that as well if you want to, but just for simplicity, as we're probably doing our first forecast or first creation in Futrli, we can keep it simple. We can then evolve that over time. So we're going to leave that budget as that is. We can then click back to go back to our home screen. I'm now going to click New again. And this time, for our forecast, we're going to use the What If option on the Create from Scratch. So I'm going to call this forecast. I'm going to ensure the duration is the same. And I'm going to click on the plus next to budget there. And then click Build. So what this is going to do, it's going to effectively copy that original scenario that I've called budget. And we can see all the same figures down here. But we'll see some differences when we open up the categories. We can then see this here. So this is obviously an exact copy of the previous budget because effectively we've linked it to that original. So that means if I go now and amend that budget, this will also be updated in the same way, so it'll be a copy. But it allows us to now add on extras or remove things from here, so we can then start to build a different scenario. It's like a what if this happens, or what happens if we actually do get extra revenue in each month. We can then compare between the two. So if you wanted to remove things, you can just double click in, it will then remove that from your option. You can't edit the figures here. These figures are locked as per the previous budget that we've created because it's our baseline budget that's not going to change. So that's why we can't amend these individual figures. What we can do is either remove the entire row, or we can add a new forecast item into it. This is where we can then start to add in that additional revenue. So let's say we've got the baseline budget. This is what we expect as if you kept going, but we're going to assume that this client is going to have a kind of a new contract, or a new client is going to be one. So we can then firstly rename this. Let's say new client. We can then use any of these options, any of these forecast methods, depending on what we want to do for that client. So the single repeating entry is just a one-off or a fixed repeating amount. So let's say we're going to put in here, I'm going to go for 7,500. I'm going to leave the VAT there as the default with 20%. Change the start date, put it to the end of the month. That's when they're going to invoice this. I'm going to repeat it monthly. And the credit terms, I'm just going to put a 30-day credit term on there. We can also adjust the credit terms. So you've got like a staggered amount. You can get it paid over installments, which you can put as a 30, 60, 90 days, or you can customize it by whichever days you kind of want. So you get paid in 3 days, and then the remaining 80% could be in 90 days or something. But I'm going to leave it as a straight single payment. So that's that kind of forecast created. But what we can do is have a look at these journals. This is where we're seeing the double postings happening. So it's accounting for all the movements in one. So it's hitting our balance sheet, it's accounting for VAT, it's handling the cash movements as per the credit terms. We can see them working correctly there. So it's a good way to maybe check that they're working as you intended to. And as I said before, where we set up those defaults, this is where we can then change those default accounts. So if, for example, we want to set it into a different bank account, we can just change it accordingly. You can also change it to be a different account receivable, obviously, also from a debit to a credit if you want to reverse the behavior. We're going to leave it as the standard because that's what I want. Then going to click save. Cool. Can I see it pending there? We've now got it through then. And we'll see that each line, obviously you can have as many lines as you want to per account. These two then add up to the top line. So that's our first one created. We can now edit it, for example, by clicking edit if you wanted to go back and amend something. Or we can just click plus and add another one. So we've done the single repeating entry. If we have a look at the set monthly growth rate, in here we can then increase or decrease each period by a certain percentage. So let's say we're going to have a 3% growth. The first period is going to be 5,000. I'm going to change the invoice date to start at the end of the month. It's going to repeat monthly. It's not going to end, it's going to continue through the forecast. And the credit term, we can leave as blank in this case, just to simply kind of show you how it works. Click save. You can see this here, 5,000 repeating every month, increasing by 5%. So maybe a nice one, continuing that kind of pub analogy, forecasting maybe when the client is able to kind of go back to normal and there's no restrictions on there on kind of timings, you can see maybe an exponential growth back to normality when they open up the doors fully, for example. So that can be quite a good current use case. Or we can use the on the fly method. This is where we then enter in specific amounts. So we can just type in the figures, such as this. Or we can select the boxes and then type in what we want. And we can then also use maybe the quick edit options to do some kind of basic maths, so like decreasing by some percentage. So you might, for example, use that method if you're furloughing staff and you want to reduce their wages by a certain percentage, you can use that there. Then got the formula method. That's where you can then start to link accounts. So maybe we've got a cost of sale that is actually a percentage of our income. We could do that in this way. Or we can use the non-financial data, for example, here as well. So we simply just link accounts by finding the account in question. So then we can start to do things like this. So this, if we assume we're building our forecast out for our cost of sales, we could do income is 20% makes our cost of sale. Well, we'll see that the kind of top half of each method changes from method to method. The bottom half remains the same. So we've got the repetition pattern. If there's VAT on there, the credit term, so they'll always remain there on method to method. We've then got the manual journal. This is where we can then transfer money from one account to another. This is used mainly when you clear the opening balances, but you can also use it in the kind of just traditional transfer an account, transferring an amount from between accounts. Click cancel. What I'm going to do is now just remove that extra one that I just added in, the little test. And you then simply just go through and build that forecast out. Obviously, the workings tab is where we do all of the editing. You can look at the profit and loss or the balance sheet or the cash flow, just so the others aren't then there to confuse you. These are ones just without the other P&L there, so you can just look at it without the others, which can be good, just simply by opening up any category as before. But we do all of the editing and the amending of figures underneath the workings tab. We obviously then have a chart at the top here to help us visualize it. So you can then add on extra features and see how that will look over time. But this is obviously a fairly basic chart to begin with. So what we want to do for the client is present it as a board or print report. So a board is like a live dashboard, which your client can log into if you want, or we've got the traditional printed report, which you can build as a PDF. So I'm going to build this kind of comparison report as a board. I think in current times, as obviously we now are being told to stay at home, Boris has changed his mind. Maybe building out an interactive board, which you could then share with your client. You can also use it on presentation mode and really make it interactive. I think that could be maybe a good way that we can engage with clients because we might not be able to see them face to face. But obviously you can build things out in a printed report as well, pretty much the same way. It's just a different layout rather than building it on an interactive board here. We've got a load of templates which you can use. A variety are preloaded into your account. If you see any that you want, then just let us know. It's worth to note actually on that point. If you see anything or you've got any queries at all, obviously you can reach out to me. We do have our support team as well. So you open it up by clicking on the little widget. You can then speak to them by sending them a message, and you can speak normally with Nathan, that chap there. It looks a bit shaggy there. He's got a lockdown beard going on. But yeah, he's really quick to respond. Says a day, but that's just to kind of cover all time zones and ensure that kind of a good expectation is set. But he normally replies within minutes or within an hour or so. So don't tell him I said that, but he is incredibly quick. Or Matt as well. He's the head of support. You can speak with them. So certainly feel free to drop him a message, whatever you want. You can just type in, and they'll be quick to kind of help you out. Cool, but this time we're actually going to use a kind of blank canvas. We're going to use a new board. So we're going to build one up from scratch here. So give it a name here. I'm going to call this budget versus forecast. Cool. You just simply click enter to kind of confirm that title, or you click on the tick. But I'm now going to click add card. So I'm going to build out kind of like a profit and loss and balance sheet, a bit of an elevation maybe on standard management accounts. It'll be a really good way to bring that work we just done to life a bit. So we go down to the profit and loss. I'm going to go down to the profit and loss comparison. This is a template which we can simply select, and we can then amend accordingly. So I'm going to expand it out so it fits that space. I'm then going to select that client that we've just been working on, if it wants to stay there. There we go. And then you'll see that the default settings are to be year versus year. So that means you're going to compare the last 2 years together. But we want to change we want to be comparing rather our budget with our forecast. So we've got the 2 columns side by side, so we can see the difference. We can then select the date range, so we can maybe look at this month and the following, let's just say 4 months. So we're looking at a 5-month period. Well, let's go for 5 to 6 month period, so half a year. You can change any of the date settings as well, so you can look at quarters, we can look at weeks, days. Simply select the period that's relevant for you. We'll then go to the report tab. So because it's a template, we've got all of the standard P&L groups and formulas added in there. You can reorder as well if you want to, by just simply dragging it around. And we can also add in extras as well by clicking on see all. And you can then search your chart of accounts and then add in whatever you want. We're going to leave it as the standard. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off the chart. So when you add a card, there'll be some defaults added. For profit and loss, we don't really want the chart. Too many variables going on. We just want the table. And then the columns tab will then see some comparison options. So we've got the percentage and we've got the pound variance, both selected. In this case, I'm just going to have the percentage. So I'm going to turn off the currency variance. Then down here in the summary totals, we can then put on some totals if we want to. So maybe we want to put on a financial year to report end. So it'll be the total of the financial year until the end of the report. So that'll be until 6 months of the report. If we then hit done, we'll then have our P&L comparison there. So we can use presentation mode, as I mentioned before. So maybe, let's say this is completed, but we're still going to continue with this report, but we can click on full screen and we can then start to like toggle across and really start to bring this table to life a bit more. You can open up any categories and we can now start to see the differences between the budget and the forecast that we've added in. Obviously the figures are quite similar. I've only added in that extra bit of income, but we can start to see the differences there. And our forecast is clearly showing a positive upturn in the income there. So that's the first card to add on, the profit and loss comparison. What we're going to add on now is some other charts down below. So we're going to add on maybe an income comparison. So click on add card. and then we're going to click Add Card to End of Board. That will mean that the card will appear at the bottom of the board. If it doesn't, it will appear at the top. You have to drag it down, so it's a bit of a time saver to click that little box there. And rather than using a template like the profit and loss comparison, I'm going to select comparison. So the same setup, it just doesn't have any categories added yet. So I'm going to give this a name here. I'm going to call this income. I'm going to put on a subtitle as well, comparison. Let's call it budget versus forecast. I'm then going to select the organization as normal, so select the Real Story Productions. And I'm going to also select the two forecasts, not actual data, budget, there we are, budget and forecast. So again, like the P&L, the two ones we just built. And then we're going to select the same date settings as we did above. So we're going to have a 6-month period, this calendar month, plus the following 5, giving us 6 periods there. Then go to the Report tab, and we'll see the income's added there automatically. So when you use a card that's not templated, it will always give you income just so it can load. In this case, it's good, we're doing an income. But if you wanted to add something else that's not income, you just add it, and we can then, let's say total expenses, you could just delete off income, for example. But we're going to leave income there because that is what we're looking to do. I'm going to turn off the chart, turn off the table. I'm going to leave the chart on there. The table was turned off because we've got the kind of core numbers in the table above. We just want something to bring it to life. We can then change the chart type. So we click on the little chart symbol. We can then see here a variety of different chart types depending on what we want to build out for the client. I'm going to leave it as a default column and then click done. Cool. That's our two forecasts compared, and we can see that small increase on the forecast there. I'm going to build another chart to the right of it. I'm going to stick with income. This time I'm not going to do a comparison. I'm going to do a kind of a full year comparison. Add card. Again, tick Add Card to the board and select Report Card this time. So we're not comparing now. We're just going to look at one data source. So in here, I'm going to be looking at the full year, but I'm going to compare how actuals trend into the forecast. So if we click income, this time I'm going to call actuals versus forecast. I'm going to select that client, and this time I'm going to select forecast and actual data. Then if we then go down, I'm going to select the forecast that we've created, and I'm going to select a different date range here. So I'm going to put the custom period end, which means it's going to remain as that, because actually it's worth to note the date settings that I've picked here of this calendar month, that will mean that it will always update. So if you log in now and see this report now, it'll be September. But if you log in October, it will be October then the next 5 months. But if you put it as a custom period end, that will mean that whenever you log in, it'll always be looking at the date range that you put in here. So why I've done that is because I'm going to put it as its year end. So let's say the year end is 31st of December. And I'm going to put the previous 11 months. So we've got a full 12 months, the full current calendar year. Then go to the report tab. Again, we've got income there, which is good. We're doing income again. We can leave it there. I'm going to turn off the table. I'm going to change the chart type to a spline area. Then click done. Cool. And there is now income showing for the full 12 months, of which we've got the first 8 or so months of actual data, and it's then taken account of that forecast that we've added for the subsequent months. So it's a really good way to look at what's my current year going to look like. We can see what it's been like, and it's what is going to happen moving forward based on that forecast. Even though that date range is not going to change, so it's always going to be looking at that 12-month period, this individual card, this line of actuals will move over time. So if your client logs in, they'll be able to see an up-to-date version of their actuals versus their forecast. Cool. That's kind of our P&L area added. We can obviously add other things in there like costs and all sorts, but I'm just adding maybe a first introductory report that you might give to your client, which is all about opening up extra doors, I suppose, and opening up that conversation. Because if your client then wants a closer look at costs, we can then add on a chart at that point. I think with your first report, we want to make sure it's relevant to the client. So I'm going to assume maybe the client's really concerned about their income at the moment, so they're going to be getting a report like this. And we can not overwhelm them with all the bells and whistles that could come down the line as we start that conversation with the client. But I am going to add on some balance sheet areas. So I'm going to click Add Card. I'm going to click Add Card End of Board again. Set the balance sheet template. And I'm going to, again, stick with the comparison and go to a balance sheet comparison. Down here, I can expand it out. I'm going to select, as we've done all the time, the same client. I'm going to select the same, I want to put it back. Set the same date range and the same forecasts. So budget and forecast. We can then select this calendar month following 5 periods. Then on the report tab, again, I'm going to turn off the chart. Too many things going on the balance sheet. We don't really want a chart to show that. And then in the columns, this time, I might just have the currency as my variance. So we can have a look at exactly the difference in the money in the bank. Or you could have both, or the same one to kind of keep it going. But we can have it as currency just so we can kind of see for demo purposes, I suppose. And then click Done. Cool. And there we go. We've now got our difference there, which we can see between the balance sheets of our budget and our forecast, and we can compare the two there. So that's kind of what I wanted to show. Obviously, this is now a live dashboard. So by that, I mean that we can share that with the client. So we can effectively add them as a user by going to the users, clicking Add User. And you can then send them a link. They'll then be able to log into your account. So it would look exactly like this. If you give them permission that's a regular user, that means they won't see the forecasting tab. They will only see the board that obviously that you've built, and where they won't be able to view any other companies and things. And it's a really good way for them to track that on a daily basis. Alternatively, you can use the board, as we've been talking about, as a good way if you're having a meeting with your client over Zoom, for example, or if you are doing it face-to-face, maybe on a projector. It's absolutely hammering rain outside at the moment. It's quite distracting. The heavens have opened. But we can use it in presentation mode. So we can then toggle through, really speak to the client, bring in the kind of information to life. And that's what Futrli is all about, I suppose. It's about spotting trends and they might not be able to with like the standard reports, maybe out of Xero or out of other softwares. We are being able to visualize it for the client so it really speaks to them. And then just helps those better discussions over time. We can also build a report straight out of this, so we can click print. This will then build a quick PDF. It's a really nice way if a client wants a handout, maybe after that Zoom session that you've had. You can go on the budget versus forecast, and then build out a comparison there. I put it all on one page for us, each card on one page, so it's nice and clear. But if you wanted a report that's maybe got a balance sheet and then a visual underneath it as well, or maybe 2 different charts on the same page, that's what we need to use the printer reports for. So that's why you would use the printer reports, to make it more of a, we'll open it up again, to make it more of a, maybe more of a professional looking set of management accounts, or a detailed analysis that a client wants to be sent out as a traditional pack. That's what you use that for. But you have the option to print quickly from the board as well if you have that need. Cool, that's pretty much all I've got. I saw a couple of questions come through, so I'll stop sharing. Certainly if you've got any questions now, now's your chance. Whack them in the Q&A. I'll certainly be happy to address that. It looks like the rain is still going, but I haven't been flooded yet, so that's all good. Cool, so I see a question just popped through, so I'll go to that one first. Is there a way to select custom colors for column headers instead of the pink and orange default? So you don't like the pink and orange? It is certainly Marmite. I personally think it's okay as the branding, but certainly a lot of people aren't really a fan of it. But certainly you want to put your own branding on it as well, which we can do. It is additional service. It's called our white labeling service, which doesn't just change the colors. It will change the logo, so you put your own logo on it. You can change the domain name, so it'll be your own specific domain name. The login page will be on brand and all sorts. So it really is a great extension of your brand. We effectively ask for your brand colors and mock it up so it looks like effectively you're logging into your own website, which is pretty cool. It is an additional service though. Let's give your account manager a shout. Certainly let me know as well if you want any further details on it. We can kind of have a discussion and get that set up for you. Cool. Got a question, Cass, I see there in the chat box. You've got the branding, but the logo doesn't print. It's interesting. I'll have a look at that for you. It should be on your printer reports. Your logo is there automatically on the cover sheet. The logo isn't on the boards, so if you print from the board, your logo isn't there. But you can add a logo into a text card, so maybe it's that. So if it's on your printer report, let me know and I can take a little look. If it's not, it should be all over your accounts. If your client logs in to a board, they'll see it. So yeah, maybe if you're printing from there, then maybe that's why. But yeah, let me know if I've had a look at any people selected reports. Okay, I'll have a look into it, Cass, for you. I know you're with Ron, I believe, so I'll have a word with him and we'll get to the bottom of what's going on with your logo. Cool. Got a question here from Claire. Thank you, Claire. What templates do you recommend for presenting the cash flow? So there are some in there. It kind of depends, I suppose, on what you're wanting to demonstrate specifically. But let me have a quick little look at the templates whilst we're here. Probably better to show you. Go to My Boards, templates. So in here, we have got, let's go to Business Review. This is quite a good one. It combines a variety of different areas that you'd want to show a client. And if you scroll down, I believe there is some cash flow elements, EBITDA, forecast cash flow. There we go. This is the best way that I would present the movements of cash, where we've got the receipts and payments, opening and closing bank, and the net cash movement. Certainly you can show different areas of cash. You might want your bank balance. You could do a nice comparison card that we've been doing with income maybe. You can show the two there. But if you want the main component of cash flow, I would use this particular card. It is a template already in here, which you can see down here. It's called forecast cash flow. We'll then need to just, when you're using that template, just get the ordering like this. So effectively what I do is make receipts and payments at the top, turn off the display of the receipts and payments. So we're then just only looking at the kind of movements at the top here. So we're not then kind of being confused with all 5 measures in there. But yeah, certainly forecast cash flow is the way that I'll present it. Yeah, so hopefully that kind of goes some way to answer that. Cool. I've got another question that came in regard to the forecasting. Just kind of confirming, is it an integrated 3-way forecast? So yeah, certainly when you're building out a forecast in Futrli, it is very much a 3-way forecast. So it's not just cash, it is profit and loss, balance sheet, and cash flow. That then allows you to use the full business approach really with the client. You can then pick out certain areas like we're discussing with the cash or the P&L balance sheet and show it to your client. So yeah, certainly the 3-way is there. We don't have to present it always as all that information. You can just pick out the areas that you want to the client, but it certainly gives you the full overview and then just allows all those detailed predictions that you're making to be that much more accurate. Cool. So I think that is pretty much it that's come through. So normally when I wrap up, a question pops up. So if that happens, I'll certainly answer it. But if not, I'll send you the recording. I'll send you kind of any material that I think might be relevant. Next week's session, I can't remember what it's on now, but it will be next week on Thursday. I am here. I'm not going on annual leave again. Probably until Christmas now, maybe. So yeah, certainly let me know if you've got any questions. If you've got any other feedback on maybe what you want to cover, certainly let me know. All the account management, all the support team. So I'll let you get on with your day. I'm going to check out if my garden's flooded too much. Thanks a lot. Cheers then.